On the night before Thanksgiving, 1971, a man in a dark suit and sunglasses hijacked a Boeing 727, demanded $200,000 in cash and 4 parachutes, released all 36 passengers on the tarmac, and then jumped out the back of the plane into a freezing rainstorm at 10,000 feet. He was never found. Not his body. Not his parachute. Not his identity. Over 45 years, the FBI investigated more than 1,000 suspects, spent millions of dollars, and came up with absolutely nothing. To this day, it remains the only unsolved airline hijacking in American history. This is the mystery of D.B. Cooper and what happened after he disappeared into the dark. November 24, 1971. Portland, Oregon. A man walks up to the Northwest Orient Airlines ticket counter at Portland International Airport. He's wearing a black raincoat, a dark suit, a narrow tie with a mother-of-pearl tie clip, and dark sunglasses. He looks like any other businessman. He pays $18.90 in cash, no credit card, no identification beyond what was required for a one-way ticket on Flight 305 to Seattle, Washington. The name he gives is Dan Cooper. He boards the plane, takes seat 18C in the last row of the aircraft, a Boeing 727-100, and orders a bourbon and soda. He lights a cigarette. He is calm. Unremarkable. The flight attendant who serves him, a 23-year-old woman named Florence Schaffner, will later describe him as polite, middle-aged, and seemingly well-spoken. Nothing about him stands out. But shortly after takeoff, he hands Florence Schaffner a folded note. She assumes it's a man giving her his phone number. This apparently happened a lot in the 70s, and she drops it into her purse without reading it. Cooper leans over and whispers, "Miss, you'd better look at that note. I have a bomb." She opens the note. It says he has a bomb in his briefcase and he wants her to sit beside him. When she does, he opens the briefcase just enough for her to glimpse a tangle of red cylinders, wires, and a large battery. Whether it was a real explosive or a convincing fake, no one would ever determine. What happened next is where this story goes from a crime into a legend. Cooper's demands were precise. $200,000 in unmarked $20 bills, that's roughly $1.4 million adjusted for inflation today. 4 parachutes, 2 primary and 2 reserve. A fuel truck standing by in Seattle to refuel the aircraft the moment it landed. If any of this wasn't ready, he made it clear, the bomb would go off. The FBI scrambled. They assembled the ransom, $10,020 bills, and, crucially, they photographed or microfilmed every single serial number. Those serial numbers would become one of the most important pieces of evidence in the entire case. They also obtained 4 parachutes from a local skydiving school. By 5:39 p.m., Flight 305 landed at Seattle-Tacoma International Airport. Cooper allowed all 36 passengers and 2 of the 3 flight attendants to deplane in exchange for the money and parachutes. He kept the pilot, the co-pilot, the flight engineer, and 1 flight attendant, Tina Mucklow, on board. Then he gave his next set of instructions: fly to Mexico City. Specific altitude, 10,000 feet. Specific speed, under 200 knots. Flaps at 15 degrees. Landing gear down. And here's what's critical, he demanded the aft staircase of the 727 remain unlocked. Now, this is a detail that tells us something about Cooper. The Boeing 727 is one of the only commercial aircraft with a rear ventral air stair, a staircase built into the tail that can be lowered in flight. Very few people outside of aviation would have known this. Cooper knew it. He also knew the specific aerodynamic configuration needed for a low-altitude, low-speed jump. Was he a pilot? A paratrooper? An aircraft engineer? Nobody knows. The plane took off from Seattle at 7:40 p.m., heading south. Fighter jets from McChord Air Force Base trailed the 727 at a distance, But the night was pitch black, the clouds were thick, and a heavy rainstorm had settled over the Pacific Northwest. Visibility was essentially zero. At approximately 8:13 p.m., somewhere over the Lewis River in southwest Washington state, the crew noticed a sudden change in cabin pressure and a slight oscillation in the aircraft's tail. The aft air stair had been deployed. The instrument panel showed a pressure bump. Cooper had jumped. He leaped into a 200-mile-per-hour wind, into sub-zero temperatures, into absolute darkness, wearing nothing but his business suit, loafers, and a trench coat, carrying a 21-pound bag of cash strapped to his body. The terrain below was dense, rugged wilderness, old-growth forest, deep ravines, and the foothills of the Cascade Range. Temperatures on the ground that night dropped below freezing. What would you have done? The FBI launched one of the largest manhunts in American history. They searched hundreds of square miles of forest by air and on foot. They interviewed thousands of people. They ran the serial numbers from the ransom bills through every bank in the country. Not a single bill surfaced. Not one. For nearly 9 years, $200,000 in marked currency simply did not exist in the American economy. Then, in February 1980, something turned up. An 8-year-old boy named Brian Ingram was on a family picnic along the banks of the Columbia River at a place called Tennebar, about 9 miles downstream from Vancouver, Washington. He was digging in the sand to build a campfire when he uncovered 3 bundles of waterlogged, deteriorating $20 bills. The serial numbers matched the Cooper ransom. Total recovered, $5,800 out of $200,000. But here's where it gets strange. The money was found in a location that doesn't align easily with Cooper's projected flight path. The bills were bundled with rubber bands from the original ransom packaging, suggesting they hadn't been spent and then discarded, they'd been deposited there intact. Were they washed downstream by natural water flow? Were they planted? Did Cooper bury them and nature unearth what was left? Forensic analysis of the sediment layers suggested the money had been deposited there sometime after 1974, possibly by a dredging operation that moved river sand to the bank. The mystery of the money at Tennebar has never been resolved. And that's the only physical evidence ever found. No parachute. No remains. No clothing. No briefcase. Nothing. The FBI investigated over 1,000 suspects over the decades. Richard Floyd McCoy, a Green Beret and experienced skydiver, pulled off an almost identical hijacking just 5 months after Cooper's jump and was convicted, but the FBI officially excluded him as Cooper. Kenneth Christensen, a former Army paratrooper in Northwest Orient Purser, was proposed by his own brother on his deathbed, but he didn't match the physical description. Robert Rackstraw, a Vietnam War veteran with explosives training and a history of fraud, was a strong suspect for years, but DNA and fingerprint comparisons were inconclusive. In July 2016, after 45 years and with no closer to an answer than the day Cooper jumped, the FBI officially suspended active investigation of the case. So what happened to D.B. Cooper? There are really only 2 possibilities, and both of them are haunting. The first, he died. He jumped into a freezing rainstorm at night over some of the most inhospitable wilderness in the continental United States, wearing loafers and a business suit. Experienced skydivers have called the jump virtually unsurvivable under those conditions. His body was simply never found because the forest consumed it: animals, weather, time. The money at Tennebar was all that remained, slowly carried by water to the river's edge. He was a ghost before he ever hit the ground. The second, he survived. He had the knowledge to select the only commercial aircraft with a deployable rear staircase. He knew the correct flight configuration for a low-altitude jump. He asked for a specific type of parachute. He was calm, methodical, and precise. He made no mistakes that anyone could detect. And not a single dollar of the remaining $194,200 has ever been spent, deposited, or detected in circulation. If he survived and never spent the money, then the hijacking was never about the cash. So what was it about? Do you think he walked away? More than 50 years later, the skies over southwest Washington keep their secret. The dark timber. The cold river. The silence. Somewhere in that wilderness, or somewhere far from it, the answer exists. A skeleton tangled in parachute cord beneath a canopy of Douglas fir. Or an old man who once watched the world search for a ghost he created. We may never know which. And maybe that's exactly what Dan Cooper intended. The D.B. Cooper case remains officially open but unsolved, the only air piracy in American history that ended without an arrest, a conviction, or a confirmed identity. If you have a theory, drop it in the comments below. And if this is your first time on Obscura Files, subscribe and turn on notifications, because every week, we dig into the cases that were never meant to be found. Until next time, stay curious. Stay suspicious. And whatever you do, don't look away.